Thank you all for joining us today and welcome to our screening. This event is in honor of International Day of Zero Tolerance for Female Genital Mutilation, and today we'll be showing selected short stories from the Voices to End FGMC digital storytelling collection. And along with the viewing of these stories, you will have a chance to hear from some of the storytellers themselves. All right. So before we begin, I wanted to give you all a roadmap of what we'll be viewing and talking about today, beginning with an introduction of Maria Taher and Amy Hill, the facilitators of the Voices Project, and also an introduction to the project itself. Then we'll watch a behind-the-scenes video and some selected Voices to End FGMC stories, and we have several of our participants from the project here with us today: Lena Kandwala, Sunera Sadikali, Renee Bergstrom, Angela Peabody, and Karen Kwok. And they will be talking about their experiences of creating and telling their stories. So first up, we have the pleasure of Amy Hill with us today. She is the co-founder of Silence Speaks, StoryCenter's women's health and rights program. And she does a lot of work around storytelling and activism, as you'll hear today. So Amy, can you talk to us about your work at StoryCenter?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Welcome. It's so good to have you all joining this event. I've been working with StoryCenter for more than 15 years now, and I lead our Women's Health and Human Rights program, which is called Silence Speaks. We do participatory media and storytelling in different locations around the world. Now, of course, we're working entirely virtually due to the pandemic, but we are still hard at work and super happy to be here. Thanks, Sandra.
Great to have you. Next up, we have Maria Taher, one of the co-founders of Sahiyo, with us today. Sahiyo was founded on the belief that storytelling in all forms can end FGC. So Maria, can you tell us a little bit more about your work and how the Voices Project was established?
Hi, thanks Sandra for that. Hi everyone, my name is Maria Taher, and I'm so glad to have you all here. I'm a co-founder of Sahiyo, which is an organization working to end FGMC, and we're really excited to be able to share this project and these stories with you. And Sandra, just so you know, there's a black box that keeps appearing on the PowerPoints.
Oh, can you see the chat?
Over here. Yeah, just wasn't sure if you were aware of that.
No, I wasn't. Let me see what's... it shouldn't show. Can you see my screen as it is right now?
Yeah, sorry everybody for the technical difficulties. We can see your screen, but it's just, okay, it's gone now.
It's gone? Okay, great.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Okay. Great, sorry Maria to interrupt you. So we were up to your introduction and the Voices to End FGMC project.
Yeah, so we wanted to give you a brief overview of what the Voices to End FGMC project is. So the overall goal of the project is really to build a cadre of survivor voices willing to speak out against FGMC as a way of shifting social norms and supporting communities in really advocating for an end to FGMC. And as mentioned earlier, it's a joint project by Sahiyo and StoryCenter. So to give a little brief history, in 2018, our organizations launched an inaugural digital storytelling workshop that brought together survivors of FGMC living in the United States so that they could surface their personal experiences of FGMC. At the time, it was known as the Sahiyo Stories, and the project was used to also educate a variety of audiences on the harms of FGMC. In 2019, we expanded the project to be called Voices to End FGMC, and we hosted 3 additional workshops, 2 in person and 1 online. And we were able to further our reach by also inviting participants from around the world to join in the online platform. Now in 2021, we are actually in the process of hosting another online workshop, and this one is taking is going to be occurring over the course of 6 weeks. So this is a 5th Voices workshop that we'll be hosting. And overall, these stories have really helped to elevate the conversation on FGMC in the US and in the broader global world, and have been shared very widely through online distribution, screening events, and media. So today we're really happy to be able to share some of these Voices videos with you and hear from the participants themselves. So I'm going to turn it back over to Sandra.
Thanks, Maria, for that brief introduction. So to start, we're going to share one of the examples of our Voices Projects videos by Lena, and then we'll get to hear a little bit from Lena herself about her video. And as you're watching Lena's story, feel free to share any insights or thoughts you have, responses, reflections, anything in the chat box below. All right.
It's 1980. I'm 7 years old on summer vacation in Karachi, Pakistan. One morning, my aunt comes to take me shopping. I'm excited. We head to Sadr and stop at an unfamiliar apartment building. My aunt says, I just have to run an errand. I follow her into a dark entrance up 2 flights of stairs. We pause outside a badly scratched door, and my aunt rings the bell. An elderly woman greets us. She's dressed in a ghagra koti, and her head is covered with a dupatta. The apartment is cramped and hot, musty. The woman leads us into a brightly painted room. Suddenly, and without any warning, she grabs me and pushes me onto my back. She strips off my panties and spread eagles me with well-practiced efficiency. Before I know what's happening, I feel a sharp, hot pain between my legs. As I cry out, she says triumphantly, "Done." She quickly bundles me into a cloth diaper and brings me to my feet. Only then do I notice a pair of old scissors with blood on them on a tray next to her. I hear my aunt say, "Auntie ne salam karo?" I obey. The whole thing takes less than 15 minutes. I'm filled with shame. My mom had caught me exploring my body a few weeks before. This is a sin, she'd said. So I believe I have been punished. Over the years, I've wondered, would I have grown up more confident if I'd never been cut? Would I have been better able to appreciate and enjoy my body? Or been more comfortable with sex and intimacy? I will never know. I think back to that salam and my blood boils. I hope my story will break the circle of silence that has allowed genital cutting to continue.
Wow. Thank you so much, Lena, for making that video. That was incredibly powerful. So now we'd like to ask you a couple of questions. So the first one is, what was your experience creating these stories, and what was your storytelling process?
Yeah. I've seen the story now so many times, but each time I see it, sort of I get goosebumps and my heart is beating fast right now. So yeah. It's had a pretty deep impact. But in terms of the process, I found that it was surprisingly liberating and empowering for me. And I say surprising because I hadn't realized, by the time I made the story, I was, in my 40s. I thought long and hard about what had happened, but I hadn't realized that I still had certain mental and emotional blocks about what had happened and how I had even processed it. So, going through all of those granular details about recounting the story turned out to be incredibly cathartic. And also, more significantly, participating in this story helped me reflect about and process what had happened in a way I hadn't before. And now it's out, and I feel good about it. But but more importantly, I feel like, I had thought, before making the story, I had thought long and hard about sort of what I wanted to do with my experience and whether I wanted, how I could use it to protect others from it or to help eradicate the practice. But for a variety of reasons, including fear of repercussions within, from my community, for me or my family, or my own shame, hence the apt naming of the film, I wasn't, sure how to do that. But in a very significant way, the process of making this film and disseminating it and talking about it has helped me, has helped free me from that shame and also from the fear of reprisals within the community.
I didn't realize I was muted, but thank you. What was the storytelling process for you, like going through the workshop and workshopping that experience into a video?
Yeah, I mean, the workshop was absolutely fabulous, and I would really strongly recommend it to anyone. It was really powerful to be with a group of women who shared similar yet different experiences and were struggling with many of the same issues that I was. I think that because of the deeply personal nature of this practice, many people, and this is true for many women's issues, I think people feel isolated and ashamed, certainly, like as how I felt. And being with a community where we could sort of process and share these really deeply intimate stories was really wonderful. We were also incredibly well supported by Amy and her colleagues, not only in the art of effective storytelling, which was critical, but emotionally and psychologically. I mean, it was a very, very powerful time together. And, I felt a really strong bond throughout that time. And then, after this really intense experience of participating in the workshop, post-workshop, I felt like I had even more to process, but I had like a lot of tools to help me do that. And it helped me like figure out whether, how I wanted it to be disseminated and whether I wanted to share it with my own like personal family and community of friends. And ultimately I did decide that I would do that, but it was sort of a tougher decision than I had expected it to be. But it's also since, that was another sort of aspect of liberating me further. And since then it's also led to like, a couple of interviews, a request for to participate in a documentary project. So it's helped give me other avenues to continue my advocacy.
Great, thank you so much, Lita. I'm going to pass it over to Amy to tell us a little bit more about why storytelling is so powerful in her process of doing that through the Voices Project. And I'll screen share again. All right, go ahead, Amy.
Thanks, Sandra. So obviously, many people love stories. We got some beautiful responses to Lena's story there in the chat box. And I think just to give a little bit of context for why we're working with storytelling with this project can be useful. So I'm sure everyone in the audience is aware that storytelling has become sort of a big buzzword in health and advocacy circles. And I wanted to go over just a few really specific reasons why personal stories in particular can make a difference in terms of supporting survivors of FGMC. And of course, we just heard directly from Lena to that, but it is backed up by research. So the first bullet, I don't know if you can bring that up, Sandra. There we go. So related to work at the individual and community level, of course, research shows that telling and listening to real people's real stories can increase self-esteem and a sense of well-being, and particularly people's sense of self-efficacy, which is the belief that they have agency and can really handle life's challenges. So the second one is personal stories can also obviously bring across important information along with kind of a human interest perspective that draws on emotions. And so with this combination, the stories can prompt reflection on the part of listeners, and people can apply what they've drawn from the story to their own life situation. So they're really wonderful as health education tools. Okay, the next one. Then also story sharing and listening are key tools of popular education. So people may be familiar with the work of Brazilian educator Paulo Freire, who believed that the development of critical consciousness, which he saw as really a precursor to people being able to take action for social change, must begin with one's close examination of one's own life experience and how that is located within a larger unjust social and political environment. So basically the context for our lives. Practices like digital storytelling really function as a form of popular education and political education by supporting people and kind of connecting the dots between their own lives and the larger context, the larger cultural, political, social context in which their lives are unfolding. Okay, the next one. Can we see the next point? Oops, maybe my internet is unstable. Can you hear me, Sandra? Can you bring up the next one? So the next one, which we're not seeing quite yet, is maybe it's just not coming up. That's okay. So the next one is that sharing and listening to stories has been really shown to build solidarity among and within groups and help communities bond across difference and to spur people's desire to get involved in change making. And then finally, the last one has to do with policy. So we would something about policy up there. And so for those of you who've been involved with any kinds of policy advocacy, especially around FGMC, know that personal storytelling and personal testimony can have a profound impact on legislative decision making. And stories can also certainly be useful tools for education and advocacy around policy enforcement. There we go. So that's it. Then I think there's another slide about methodology, which would be the next one. So this is really just a quick glimpse at, so we heard a little bit from Lena about the workshop and we'll hear from others, but I wanted to just give just a very quick overview of our digital storytelling methodology at StoryCenter. So you may have heard the term digital storytelling used to describe a lot of different media production practices and media forms. So for us at StoryCenter, it is a very specific participatory storytelling and media methodology. And so, so here's what we do. The first piece of the workshop is really helping storytellers decide what story it is they wish to share as a short video. So of course, we're limited in terms of time. It's not an appropriate medium to share your whole life story. So we need to help people zero in on specific moments and experiences. And we do this by showing examples of stories that have been made in previous workshops, talking about what makes a powerful story, which Lena mentioned. We do a lot of coaching around storytelling how-tos. And then we do a story circle, which is kind of the heart of the workshop where each person gets to share their story verbally and get feedback. And then the next piece involves developing an audio recording and developing a short script and audio recording it. And for the recordings, we don't use video cameras. You may have noticed it was just voiceover audio in Lena's piece because people often tend to get nervous when a camera is put in their face, particularly when we're working with sensitive issues around gender-based violence and trauma. So instead, we just use simple audio recording equipment like what you might use for radio or a podcast. And then the third piece has to do with developing the visual treatment for the story. So we help storytellers identify photos, video clips, create and develop original photos and video clips, use artwork, anything that's appropriate to illustrate their story. And we talk about what it means to represent one's experience visually, and bring in content around how to do the visuals in a sensitive way that would avoid sort of graphic displays of the issue. And then the last piece at the end there is we guide people through the editing process. So we use a really fun cloud-based video editor called WeVideo, and we teach people hands-on how to use that tool to piece their stories together. And of course, we end with an internal screening where people can celebrate and connect and talk about then how the stories can be used for advocacy. So I think there's one more quick slide, and then we'll come back to watching stories, because hearing it talked about is not as interesting as actually watching the stories. Oh no, okay. We actually have a little mini, sorry, I got mixed up. So I'm gonna turn it back to Sandra and we'll see this short piece.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Amy. So we're going to watch a short background video of how the stories were made. And then Maria will talk a little bit about the project again, and then we'll go back to you, Amy.
Just make sure that you really take your time with it. So just don't rush. And then I like to record people all the way through, but if you make a mistake, it's okay. Don't worry. You can just stop and pause and start again at the beginning.
It's 1980. I'm 7 years old, on vacation in Karachi, Pakistan. I follow her into the dark entrance up 2 flights of stairs. We pause outside a badly scratched door, and my aunt rings the bell.
Good?
Yeah,
Do you think it sounds better?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, great.
thank you.
That's it.
Years ago, I took part in a workshop with StoryCenter. It felt really important that we organize this workshop so that we can have other women who either have undergone female genital cutting, female genital mutilation, or know of women in their families or others in their community members who have undergone it, for them to tell their own stories in their own words.
I chose to tell this particular story because I feel very misunderstood.
I chose to tell this particular story in the workshop to highlight how trauma.
Sorry, everyone. Is there a lag? I think my internet is a little choppy, so are you all hearing the video okay? Yes, no. Okay, I'll just keep going with it then. Thank you.
Traumatizing the experience of being cut is.
I think before speaking out, before taking a stance, before figuring out your own viewpoint, first you need to understand fully what's happened so you can reflect and move on from there and start to heal.
And I would like other survivors of FGM just to stand out, to get that strength, to be able to step up, and also to talk about the pain.
Even though this is a harmful practice, we can learn to forgive each other, and we can hope with that forgiveness to be able to prevent it to future generation of girls.
Initially, I thought sharing my story with the group would be difficult because there are a lot of sort of raw emotions that I still had.
Sharing the story the first day was a bit of a surprise to me because I'm emotional and it happened 7 years ago.
It was difficult to really talk about it because it feels very selfish. A lot of people in their stories about their own husband. I
think we should stop. We're going to actually switch standard issues, and so I'm going to try to share the screen. Apologize, everybody, for that. So Sandra, stop the video, and then I'll share. Zoom technology always. All right, can you all see my screen?
Yeah, it's not, it shows the notes. Yeah.
Make sure that you really take your time with it. So just don't.
Sorry, is it just showing the notes or is it showing my screen now?
It's just showing the notes.
Oh, that's weird. All right, I'm gonna try this one more time. Apologies, everybody. It was just showing me that it was showing the full screen. Okay, is it just showing the notes? Could one of the panelists let me know? Sorry, I can't, I'm sharing my screen, so just be.
Now, there we go.
Okay, I'm gonna push play and we're gonna hope for the best.
Just make sure that you really take your time with it. So just don't rush. And then I like to record people all the way through, but if you make a mistake, it's okay. Don't worry. You can just stop and pause and start again at the beginning. It's 1980. I'm 7 years old on vacation in Karachi, Pakistan. I follow her into the dark entrance up 2 flights of stairs. We pause outside a badly scratched door, and my aunt rings the bell. Good? Yeah. Do you think it sounds better? I think so. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, great. Thank you. That's it.
Two years ago, I took part in a workshop at StoryCenter. It felt really important that we organize this workshop so that we can have other women who either have undergone female genital cutting, female genital mutilation, or know of women in their families or others in their community members who have undergone it, for them to tell their own stories in their own words.
I chose to tell this particular story because I feel very misunderstood. I chose to tell this particular story in the workshop to highlight how traumatizing the experience of being cut is.
I think before speaking out, before taking a stance, before figuring out your own viewpoint, first you need to understand fully what's happened so you can reflect and move on from there and start to heal.
And I would like other survivors of FGM just to stand out, to get that strength, to be able to step up, and also to talk about the pain.
Even though this is a harmful practice, we can learn to forgive each other, and we can hope with that forgiveness to be able to prevent it to future generation of girls.
Initially, I thought sharing my story with the group would be difficult because there are a lot of sort of raw emotions that I still had.
Sharing the story the first day was a bit of a surprise to me because I became emotional, and this happened 70 years ago.
It was difficult to really talk about it because it feels very selfish. A lot of people were telling their stories about their own katnas, and I don't remember my own.
I haven't really shared my story publicly. This was my first time doing it with a big group.
I was very nervous about it initially because I didn't think I could do that much in 3 days.
I'm really new to speaking out. I just started to get involved with advocacy and activist groups just earlier this year. And before that, I kind of sat with my own disagreement with FGC.
It helped me to overcome some of the shame that has lingered with me as a result of being cut to this day.
I've seen growth within me. I've grown, and I've also enjoyed, that sisterhood, the unity that, every other participant showed.
And it's actually strengthened my love for my community. And, even though I disagree with this one practice, that love is still very strong, and it's a part of who I am.
I'm hoping that viewers will realize that female genital mutilation is not just something that happens to people of a different color in a faraway land.
Supporters of genital cutting claim that the cutting in the Bora community is just like a nick or a scrape that causes no harm and in fact may enhance sexual pleasure. Through my story, I want to explain how in fact it is a form of violence that has remained and foreshadowed my life.
I really hope that when people watch my video that they'll understand that I love my mother, and yes, I did undergo this, and she did take me to have FGC done or Katna done, but she was a great mother, and she did what she thought was right at the time.
I hope people will realize that FGC is complicated. It's not just a one-sided, one-dimensional kind of issue, and also that, mother-daughter, mother-child relationships can be very complicated. You can still love your mother very much and still maybe question some of the decisions that she made.
One of my more immediate goals is to take all the really important messages that I heard and take them home and talk with the people around me first, because I think if everybody starts those conversations, then little things add up to big things.
In the future, I hope to reach out to individuals who might be against the practice of FGC in the community, but they're just afraid to speak out for whatever reasons.
There is a hope for young girls out there if we can only unite together all over the world and say no to FGM.
And I want people to know that it's okay. It doesn't change your identity. It doesn't change who you are.
The hope is that as we share these stories, we can inspire other women and other men, even from communities where this might be occurring, to help speak up publicly about it and really stop female genital cutting from being a taboo topic that is only talked about in private circles to something that is public and something that we all can recognize is a harmful practice that we need to end.
Just make sure that you really take
All right, so we shared that story because we wanted to give you a behind the scenes look at what the workshop is like. We do have a total of 37 stories now, and we are in the midst of a workshop, so we'll have more stories a little bit later this year. But now I wanted to turn it back over to Amy to talk a little bit about the impact of digital storytelling. And apologies again for the technical issues. Sandra actually, I got kicked off, and so I'll be working to facilitate the rest of the webinar. But Amy, turning it over to you.
Thanks, Maria. So we wanted to just give a little bit of perspective on impacts. I'm sure many of you doing this work could kind of glean this on your own, but these pieces are loosely based on the social ecological model for public health and on principles of social and behavior change communication. And so we've got 4 little boxes here. I think there should be one more a policy one. So this is similar to the other chart, but this just breaks down very specifically some of the impacts. So the first is certainly the impact on storytellers themselves as individuals in terms of creating a supportive environment where people can reflect on their feelings and enhancing their well-being and really positioning them to take leadership. So this is not just kind of a one-off media workshop. We really engage with and work with the storytellers afterwards to collaborate and provide and to create lots of opportunities for them to share their stories and so on. And then the next piece looks at the impact also on individuals, but on people's learning. So this goes back to the use of digital stories as learning tools. And I think it's just important to point out that the stories, just with their directness of emotional expression and their ability to convey some nuance of language and culture, makes them great tools for giving information and imparting specific skills. And then at the community level, our work in digital storytelling on lots of different issues has really shown that community story screenings, particularly in person, but certainly hopefully screenings like this as well online, can help generate strategic and deep discussions about the issue of FGMC and help audiences get clear on how they can get involved in taking action. And then finally, the impacts at the policy level in terms of bringing the concerns of those who are directly affected by the issue into the policy arena. So whether we're talking about public policy in terms of legislation at local, state, or national levels, or whether we're talking about institutional policies of health organizations, schools, or other civic and community groups. So that's just a glimpse of some of the impacts, and I will turn it back over.
Thank you, Amy. All right, so we want to show a couple of more stories and then hear from the story creators. So here's our next one.
Legs wide open, pointing to the sky. You look up to the ceiling of a hospital. Your external genitalia exposed to the open air. Others control it, manipulate it, mess with your axis. My first lithotomy, when they cut a piece of clitoris, 4 or 5 millimeters of vital tissue, having completed 8 rounds around the world, by ritual, by patriarchal order. The same position at 25, giving birth to my daughter. A white man, obstetrician, thrust his whole hand into my vagina and brutally performed the Hamilton vaginal touch without any prior notice or consent. The escalation of pain, violence, pain, vomiting, violence, intensifying. A midwife at the Reina Sofia Hospital in Cordoba was laughing at my pain, making fun of my requests, of my decision to avoid anesthesia. I was questioned because of my ethnic origins. I was invaded with irrelevant questions while contracted in pain. This white woman left me in a lithotomy position, lonely, abandoned, in that room, on that cold gurney, the same gurney of mutilation. When 2 of my own women grabbed my legs, held me down to dissect that irrelevant piece of clitoris. My delivery continued, in lithotomy, asking for help to endure the pain. I give up, and I finally asked for the epidural. That woman succeeded, abused, violated. Power abuse and racism enacted in all its splendor and impunity. I gained strength and expelled from myself my whole being. They cut part of the vaginal tissue, an episiotomy without warning, neither consent. All goes well, they say. My daughter is fine. No reason, no consent. 2 cuts in lithotomy position, looking at the ceiling, vulnerable with legs wide open, exposed. Katna, all these cuttings, prints of patriarchy, misogyny, institutional racism, woman towards woman.
We're going to show one more. And please feel free to write your reflections and your thoughts in the chat box as well. So here is one more by Karen Kwong.
I remember her story. How could I not? We are both women. Our connections to refugee communities, another, same. My mother's family fled the Red Guard during the Cultural Revolution of China, just like she fled conflict in Eastern Africa. I still think about what could have been done differently back then. With her husband in a refugee camp, she and her son came to my family health clinic. It struck me that our roles could have been easily reversed. She could have been the clinician, myself as the patient. Our paths crossed here, yet our lives were so different. She requested a gynecological exam, one that would demonstrate evidence of female genital mutilation, FGM. This gynecological exam would have served as official judgment, but I'm not a lawyer, I'm not the police, and I'm not federal immigration. This verdict could commit further persecution against her, the suffocation of her voice, voiceless. When she suddenly stopped coming to the family clinic, I called her, but reached a disconnected phone. She left without a trace. I had more questions, though even fewer answers existed. As a woman and daughter of refugees myself, why did I have the power to describe what had happened for her? How vulnerable would I have been if I had been in her shoes? How did I have the right, the authority, the end result of extinguishing the humanity of her refugee experience? Her testimony attests to sharing the effect of FGM on womanhood. How would she cross-examine me? Did I fulfill my duty in empowering women survivors after their experience of FGM? Looking back at my years in primary care, I see so many dimensions to each person, in families and in communities. Family tradition, culture, spirituality, and politics play such a large part in women's health. Now, I ask health science students, who are you responsible to and for? How can you partner with survivors of female genital mutilation? Her story is not mine, but if we believe in the idea of same, we are igual, sama, nifs ashe.
Great. Thank you to both Sunera and also to Karen for creating those stories and sharing them with us. I want to invite you both now to share some reflections and thoughts. And I wanted just to ask if first you might be able to talk a little bit about what the workshop process was like for you and the impact that you had on it. Maybe would you like to go first?
Hi, everyone. The storytelling was really powerful and empowering. When Sahiyo reached me via Maria in 2019, I was just pregnant of 2 months, and I had some questions in my mind about this storytelling project. What would I want to say? Because I already wrote a poem telling my story to say it also to the Sahiyo project in 2 years ago, I think, 2 years before. So the question I wanted to ask me is why I want to tell something, and I didn't want to tell. As I was pregnant, I realized that I would. It was a good moment to combine the FGM experience when I was 8, also in karate, and my first delivery, which was really violent also, and both were in lithotomy positions. So I started imagining a lot of different situations, and it was really fun also. And all the webinars, and it was really a structured process, so I could think, and I would had positive feedbacks. And then when I'm from Portugal, and when I was on vacations, so I did it with my husband, these videos, and it was fun because the kids were there, and even if they don't appear, everyone was there. It was really relaxing, and I have to say that after, when everything was done and when I see the videos, I feel also overwhelmed because it was so light to do it. But then when I see the results, I feel, oh my God, this is really intimate and really difficult to express this all this violence on woman's body. And I really want to focus on all the structure that is behind it, patriarchy, and all the, I talk about racism also as a anti-racist and feminist activist. For me, it was important to talk about these issues because they are all connected. And so it was, I think this was really great to do this experience. I would repeat it, actually.
Thank you, Sunera, for sharing. Karen, I'd like to invite you to speak. And also, since you are a healthcare provider, I would love to hear a little bit about why you feel it was important for you to share this story, and how storytelling can really support educating healthcare providers too.
Thank you for having me on this panel. It's an incredible honor to share space and to have heard stories for the other speakers here on their experience. What was important to me as a clinician to be a part of the workshop experience is that, unlike any other piece of the curriculum for nurse practitioners, we have not had that exposure, and it's so vital in the art of patient care to be able to be sensitive, to be able to empath with a patient in their experience. And I wanted to specifically highlight the gifts that Mariah had brought as a social worker and having the healing space of the workshop, as well as Amy with her oral history perspective. And in the experience of this safe space, it was important for me as a clinician to hear voices of survivors, to be able to reflect with them on how I could best carry out my responsibilities as a clinician to ensure that patients have that same empowered voice and role in their experience in being able to be the active drivers in their care and in the design of health as it is delivered through the narrative of those stories, and promoting, supporting patients and survivors to take back that authority, to play that central role. That helped me reflect and to be a better advocate for how clinicians should be able to redesign the curriculum to ensure that in gynecology care, it's much more complicated and complex and nuanced than is shared in the current curriculum as it is. The learning tools on being able to relate with patients, but also to understand the importance of anatomy in a patient who has suffered from FGM needs to be highlighted. And then the policy advocacy role that and responsibility that clinicians have. So it was a great honor, and I thank both of you for that, and also for my fellow cohort members. And again, the kudos to all the survivors here who are sharing their story. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Karen.
All right, I'm going to share my screen again, and we're going to watch our final two videos.
My sisters and I were spared from female circumcision when we were children growing up in Liberia. Our parents didn't practice it, but a lot of people around us did. Not until many years later did I make the connection between what I knew as female circumcision and what the world calls female genital mutilation or cutting, FGMC. I was shocked to learn that the girls I had seen in Liberia walking around with white chalk drawn all over their bodies and beads around their waists and breasts had experienced it. I asked my mother, "What happened to those girls?" She responded, "They were in the grabber bush." As a child, I wanted to go to the grabber bush and be like those girls, but my mother never allowed it. Now, decades later, I find myself advocating against FGM. While Liberia remains a practicing country, girls are still taken into the grabber bush and too many deaths occur. In 2013, a 6-year-old girl lost her life during the act. In 2017, a 16-year-old died due to infection. One woman died in childbirth and her baby was stillborn. Those stories became personal to me. They haunted me. I took them to bed with me and thought about the many what ifs. What if I had been born to a different family in Liberia? My colleagues and I identified 2 areas we could help with. First, the psychological pain that women told me they were feeling by building a counseling program and providing support groups. Second, the physical pain by raising funds so women who want it can get clitoral restorative surgery. I also train and teach school nurses and law enforcement on FGMC so they will be aware of it. When I see the women we assist becoming more comfortable with sharing their own stories, my memory goes back to the girls with chalked and beaded bodies and to the change we are making together.
Final story.
I was born in 1944 to a loving Midwestern American farm family. We were close to the earth and our animals. When I was 3, my mother became concerned that my face turned red when I touched my clitoris. She brought me to a doctor, and the doctor cut me. My mother said, "Don't ever talk about this." I was alone with my questions as a child, teenager, and young adult. I did not discuss nerve damage discomfort, even with my sisters. When I gave birth to my first child, I did not talk about the complications I faced. I wanted a natural labor, but the doctor didn't know what to do. He put me under to perform an extensive episiotomy. I awoke 4 hours after my daughter was born. and it took my body months to heal. I told a couple from my church about what had happened to me as a child. They said, "Don't ever tell that story again." Later, I shared with women at work who said, "Don't repeat that or you'll ruin your career." But is this really my shame? What about other women having their babies with doctors who don't know what to do? I could not stay silent, and I started reaching out to new people. My Somali friend Filsan Ali and I produced a bilingual brochure for infibulated Somali women to give to their doctors to make safe labor and delivery plans. I went public internationally, and my close friends and family supported me. Creating art and connecting with nature has helped me heal. I've learned to spin wool and weave on a loom. I have found peace in flower gardens, weeding, deadheading, and making bouquets. Today I live where eagles soar and deer feed by a river. I hope my story will help people be aware that girls have been cut in cultures throughout the world.
Thank you so much, Renee and Angela, for taking part in our Voices workshop. And I would love to invite both of you now just to talk a little bit about your experiences. Same question, but would love to learn a little bit more about what your storytelling process was like, but also maybe if you both were willing to speak about how you've utilized your stories or in your own advocacy work too, that would be wonderful. And I'll invite Renee to speak first. Renee, you're on mute.
For the workshop, first of all, I had to reflect on my life to determine what aspect of becoming a survivor would be a worthwhile focus. I chose being silenced because it encompassed most of my life. The StoryCenter guidelines were very helpful, so that writing the script and finding the images was really a fun challenge. And when we were all gathered together on Friday evening, I found that my emotions began to surface when I told my story and when I listened to the others. And a bond developed among the group, and I felt accepted by everyone once they understood that, yes, this aging white woman experienced FGM too. The members have become my friends. And Severina has moved to Minnesota and is very much a part of our lives. I shared the StoryCenter videos, including my own, in a workshop at the Academy of Communication and Healthcare winter course. And in preparation for this course, I practiced with a group from the Knowledge and Evaluation Research Unit at the Mayo Clinic. One of the physicians there suggested that I should present it to the Mayo medical students. So I met with the OBGYN instructor and did a half-hour presentation of a lifetime of physician interactions regarding the cut. I suggested to the students how the doctors could have handled the situations differently. And the students were very much engaged and asked many questions. Because of the pandemic, this year I was asked to do the presentation on video that will be shown next week to the medical students in both Rochester, Minnesota and Scottsdale, Arizona. And the next day I will have a question and answer session with those 100 students. So.
Thank you, Renee, for sharing. And I really wanted you to talk about how the process was, but also the advocacy work that you've been doing, because that is part of this Voices Project. And we actually really love seeing how the people who have created stories have used the stories further in their own advocacy. And I'd love to ask Angela now to also reflect on your story and talk about how you utilize the stories.
Well, thanks, Maria, and thanks, Amy, for putting this on. The storytelling process was extraordinary for me. I had done a lot of public speaking, but this experience was like no other. Being in the room with several survivors and advocates, each working on her very own story, just made it so phenomenal. We had the opportunity of bringing in past photos, as you saw on the demonstration, and images, and creating a mini production of our stories. That was really interesting, even though I have a media background, but this was really special for me because it is the work that I do. It was also fabulous working with a production team of professionals that took me back to the days in Liberia when I worked as a newscaster. It was a great 2-day experience. I think it was 2 days or 3 days experience, but everyone was treated with respect, and the camaraderie gave it a family feel to the experience. At the end of the day, at the end of the last day, one of the survivors became ill, I remember. And it was amazing how everyone just rallied around her and ensured that she was cared for. We had developed a family unit. I didn't use my story enough, I feel, for the impact that it could have had on many others, many more. But I did share it on social media and with my family and friends. My sisters, who you saw in the picture with me, some of them had no idea about the work that I do. Some don't feel that I should be doing this work, but I do it anyway because that's what I believe. But they were appreciative that I was sincere and pointed out what we knew about and what we didn't know about in the past as children. So I certainly hope that it was impactful to those who viewed my story, and I would like to continue to share it this year in my work that I do. I'm a storyteller because I author novels. I believe in the power of a story, especially when it comes from the mouth of the main star of the story, like what we saw today. It is how film industry was popularized from storytelling, and later television. The news media rely on storytelling. And in today's social media and virtual worlds, storytelling is the key to all the tools in getting people's emotions and getting their attention. And I think in advocating against female genital mutilation and cutting, storytelling is the best way to go, because getting the women to share their stories is one step toward helping to end FGM. So I thank you for including me in this.
Thank you, Angela, for sharing. I know that we have gone over a little bit the time, and apologies for those technical glitches at the end. or at the beginning, but we really wanted to make sure all the stories were told today and that all of our speakers were able to share their reflections too. And there will be another opportunity to hear from more survivors and speakers and also ask questions. I know we weren't able to get to all of our questions that were asked in the chat box, and we're going to try to figure out how we can respond to everybody who was asked a question later on. But I'm just going to share my screen again because wanted to let you know if you were interested in seeing more of the Voices stories. As we mentioned, there are 37 videos in the collection at this point, and we'll be releasing more videos after our current workshop is over. You can visit our website. You can also visit StoryCenter's website, and you can find the Voices to End FGMC there. We are going to be hosting another session on our Voices stories, and this one will be in March for the 65th Commission on the Status of Women events, and it'll be March 16th from 10:30 to 12:30, so it'll be 2 hours long, and we'll show some different stories, and we'll have some participants from those stories also speak about their experiences. And we're hoping to also release a couple of the new videos from our current workshop, so you'll all get a sneak peek at those videos. If you're interested in attending that event or any of the events being hosted by the 65th Commission on the Status of Women, the parallel session events, there's a registration link below. You'll have to sign up to attend, but it's free, and then you'll be able to also attend our parallel event that we're hosting. And with that, I just want to invite the speakers and to share any last words before we conclude. And again, I apologize for not having enough time to do a Q&A with the audience, but we're hoping in our March event we'll have enough time for that. So please come to our March event as well. So would anybody like to share anything or any last words?
Maria, it's Karen. It's just a quick response to one of the questions regarding whether or not there is a dual concern in presenting the stories. And I would just say that there's power of voice and the necessity of curiosity, and in that learning that can combat racism or the perpetuation of discrimination. Thank you. And thank you for having me.
Thank you for responding.
I'd like to say that giving voice to this human rights violation is the best way to bring it to an end. The world can no longer deny that it happened to us, and it is happening today to girls around the world.
Thank you, Renee. I agree. Any other last words? Well, if not, then thank you so much, everybody, for attending. We'll send a follow-up email to everyone who's registered, and we hope to see you at our March event as well, too. So thank you. Bye.
Thank you for organizing.
Thank you for organizing, and thank you for attending.
Thanks, everyone. It's so good to see you all. Please have a lovely rest of your day and a good weekend. Thanks, Maria.
Thanks.